we are all set, Bart. So did we want to start tonight with a couple clinical insights?
Yeah, I want to share a couple clinical insights. I could really fill an entire show today with the clinical insights of all the different people that have been cleansing. So remember, we have a ton, literally hundreds of people cleansing, and as a result of it, the beauty is when I'm in the clinic, which is Tuesday, which is today, I have the opportunity just to speak people all day long about all the different aha moments. So, and this kind of fits perfectly into our conversation, especially at this time of the year when often people are experimenting and doing some new things, and especially like a cleanse. So with that being said, so I don't fill up our entire time with those type of clinical insights, I'm going to share two today, a little bit different. So one actually did revolve around the cleanse, but it's not a huge victory one. It's an aha, let's pay attention to this moment. So this young lady, about 58-year-old female, basically was complaining, and the way that it presented was this: Doc, I lost 4 pounds and I thought this was a good thing. And then she said, and then now I've only lost 3 pounds. So even though she's still cleansing and she's on day, I think she said like 13 or 14. And for the most part, if you're new to the show here, we launched a 10 and a 21-day cleanse at the beginning of January, and people are really on the schedule all over the place. So anyway, she's in, I don't know, maybe day 13 or 14, something like that. And she went from 4 pounds down to 3 pounds down. So any pounds down would be wonderful, because when we lose weight, typically we're losing inflammatory weight, which is great. So I still thought that's good. That's right on par, quite frankly, for a female body. That's not uncommon. So through a couple of weeks of cleansing, if you are able to drop 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pounds through that period of time, it's actually very good. Anyways, very disappointed, very upset in the way the conversation went like this. I can't believe it. I'm doing everything just the way that I'm supposed to. I haven't drank any alcohol in over 12 days. And it was as if there was like a little bit of blame being put on me, quite frankly. And this is not uncommon. So I understand that I'm a healthcare provider. This happens to a lot of other healthcare providers. And I don't even know if it's intentional that people blame their healthcare providers in the way that they use the words. But anyways, no big deal, because I've dealt with this a gazillion times before. They're not intentionally blaming me, but they're projecting it. And that is going to lead right into our conversation tonight. Where do we project our discomforts and the things that we're not pleased with in our life, the results that we're getting in life? So anyways, this takes place, and I share with her, so it's 3 pounds, good. And then because she threw in the alcohol thing, I asked her, did you get this upset when you gained the weight by drinking over 300 nights this past year? So it's different, a perspective. And sometimes we have to look at that. And in that moment, her kind of jaw was like, what? It was a pattern interrupt, no doubt. So really what I did, I had her just observe. She's really upset after 12 days of not drinking alcohol. And I asked her, is she upset with the fact that she drank alcohol over 300 nights last year and gained weight that she didn't want? And it was uncomprehendable that I would ask, are you upset with how you got to this space versus this moment in time? And really, this is actually, and it wasn't intention to be this way, this is a perfect setup for talking about one of the art of leveling up and knowing that it's not an event, and that it's truly a journey. And that is how we level up, especially over time. So that was one. And it all ended pretty well in the sense that I got her to lighten up a little bit and laugh a little bit. And asked her, said, no big deal. Why don't you just, reverse what you did last year? And she's like, I'm trying. All right. I'm like, well, then all you need to go is about 288 more days without alcohol and you'll be even.
Nice part.
Yeah. So it was just a little bit of play on words, yet it was a real moment of sometimes we have to, really take responsibility for the actions and the results that we currently have. And when we do that, sometimes the perspective is a little bit different on like kind of the overall picture, and the kind of sometimes the frustrating moment that happens in the actual moment of doing things. So that was number one. And really I share that with everyone, because sometimes if you're doing something and you're not getting the results that you want, maybe you're in the gym, you're trying to lose a little weight, maybe you're changing your food, maybe you're doing a cleanse, maybe you're looking for the job of your dreams and you're not climbing up the ladder, making the money what you want. sometimes you have to have a little perspective and consider what have you put into it. And we'll get into a little bit later that you don't always get exactly out of it what you want. And then how we manage that is huge. It's very, very huge. All right. So the number two, the clinical insight, just two tonight I want to share, is a 6-month-old little baby boy, just beautiful, full of life. In every time I have this opportunity to, especially with these infants, it literally lights me up, lights up my heart. It's hard not to be around an infant like that and just see the wonders of God or the wonders of your creator just shining through. Like it always, I've been doing this for 26 years and I still, if it happens every day, it happens every single day. I'm still in awe. So anyways, one of the things, and this was really clear today, that always puts me in awe is that the only way you can communicate with a baby, I know people make all these noises and faces and high squeaky voices, and that don't work. It's just your energy. And me and this little boy, our energies connected today like that. It was wonderful. And it was almost as if he was teaching me how to be present to communicate with him. And it was anyway. So one, these little baby boys getting their second adjustment. And what's cool about it, this was only the first time with me. They were from the West Coast. So they're on like a vacation of sorts, seeing family here, visiting grandma and grandpa. And one of their things that they were going to do was make sure that their baby got their checkup, which was it's absolutely awesome. So I really, commended the parents for it. Anyways, what I want to share about this is that while we're in the visits, and I do this all the time as much as I can with parents, is teach them how to observe their babies if they have misalignment. So I'm going to share one tonight that I did with the little kid, with the parents, about the little infant. So, and hopefully I'll be able to demonstrate this through video here. So, and I'm going to do it verbally as best I can if you're just listening to this. So the very first vertebrae in our cervical spine is called your C1. It's called Atlas. The first vertebrae, cervical spine number one, and it's the biggest cervical spine cervical vertebrae that we have. And what's unique about this one is that it looks much different than all the others. And as a result of it looking different, it moves different. So it gives us different ranges of motion than a lot of the other vertebrae. The very first vertebra that you have that your head is sitting on gives our neck 50% of all of your rotation comes from that one bone. So when we turn our head to the left or turn our head to the right, 50% of it is coming from just that one vertebrae. Now, an infant, like 0 to even almost up to 18 months, they don't necessarily have a bunch of bones. They have cartilage that is forming into bone, but one of the bones they do have is C1. It is the most common place for misalignment that, as chiropractors, we make an adjustment at C1, especially on an infant. And if you've never seen one, it's very gentle. It's all about matching energies. We all do it a little bit differently. Most of us use what we call a contact. So I use the tip of my finger and I just hold it there. And in the beginning, when there's a misalignment, it is uncomfortable. Just like when you and I have misalignments, there's muscle guarding and muscle spasms. So if your chiropractor comes along and starts to poke in that area, they can tell that there's a misalignment because they can feel the musculature. And they can feel what the muscles and tendons and fascia are doing. So the adult wiggles, they like squirm a little bit, yet they still let you do it because they know it's for the greater good. An infant does not know this is for the greater of good. We have to develop trust. So I put my finger on the spot with a little bit of pressure and the baby squirms away from it. It moves away from discomfort, away from pain, as it should. I let it come back and I leave my finger there. So it's so subtle. The baby can trust the fact that he will allow me to kind of impose my will a little bit and put a little pressure on there. Even though it's uncomfortable, the baby maintains, stays right there. And this takes a second. Like for some, it takes a lot of seconds. For this little guy, it was real quick. We got a little connection there. And then what happens is the baby leans into the actual finger making the adjustment. So I don't have to it's not an impulse. It's not a thrust like I might use for an adult. And all of a sudden, and then the bone slides. It's literally this beautiful little feel. And the baby is actually making a self-adjustment. Absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. So anyways, he had a little misalignment at C1 on the right-hand side. The way that I observe it, and this is for all my moms and dads out there, so you can observe, how do I even know? And this is just one way, but one of the most obvious. When we put the little babies in those little car seats, in all little seats there, they're typically going to have a posture. And they also had a posture in their womb. And they also going to have a favorite side that they're going to nurse on. And as a result of it, their heads end up in rotation more on one side than the other. So all I do for them is I'll hold the baby, and then I have the parent who the baby's glued to, right? They're watching the parent roll around to the other side. And I want to see that baby take their head and move it all the way to the other side without moving their shoulders. And they literally, so you and I will probably have about 90 degrees, like we can kind of square it up, maybe a little more. Babies are pretty fast. They can go past that. They can go past that. And really what I'm looking for, then I do the other side. I have them have the parent walk around and go all the way to the other side and watch them turn all the way this way. And I'm just looking to see if they turn the same direction. And it was pretty obvious when I showed the parents what I was looking for. And they're like, oh, interesting. He turns all the way one side 90 degrees and about 80 degrees on the other side. We hold the contact, the baby leans into it, and the changes the range of motion. It's kind of cool.
What a cool like observation you can do from home, and then be in service to your kiddo in a way that like you didn't realize could be so like very sweetly, softly, and but corrected for comfort ultimately.
Yeah, and I'm not saying go ahead and make those adjustments at home. That's not what I'm really teaching them, but maybe just the observation, like how do you know? And another way to look is just look at your baby's posture. If it always looks like it has a tilt to one side or shoulders roll forward, one's always high, one, it is. So those are misalignments, and that's what your chiropractor can be really helpful with.
So sweet. And I love that energetic connection. I think the younger someone is, sometimes there's less like stuff in the way. So you can just kind of go right in.
Yes, and and now that you say that, what was probably made it so unique today was, so I had grandmother, her son, and the baby. So there's 3 generations there, and it was funny saying grandmother. She's just a little older than me, and so she's been getting adjusted her whole life. So of course her son's been getting adjusted her whole life, and now the son's son is getting adjusted. And I think I've mentioned here before on our show, then one of the bigger challenges with connecting with the baby is the energy in the room. It is the fear, worry, and concern that some parents have. And it's understandable, right? They're like, what are you going to do to my baby when they hand them off to me? So I have to kind of balance those energies, because the baby's definitely picking up on the parents. And if the parents are like, oh, this kid's good, and he's like, he loves to get adjusted, and just like, yeah, we all get adjusted, and this is it. Energetically, that's very, very important. And I'll tell you, folks, that's no different than you bring your dog to a vet. That energy that we show up with is so, so important, that we fill the space, especially when those little creatures, the little babies, the little pets, they're relying on our energy to determine how they're going to act.
Yeah, it's so empowering to have not only like your parents and your grandparents and your caretakers like give you loving support, but also like just in our communities. I think a little bit about that first clinical insight that you shared. I wonder, so like if someone shared that with me, right? Like I haven't drank for 12 days and I lost 4 pounds. Celebration moment. Yes, amazing. And perhaps if the community that you're around at that time doesn't celebrate that kind of stuff, it can be tough to stay in loving support of yourself.
Yes, and the ability to celebrate is becoming a lost art. So let's dive in, because that's a topic that I think is worthy of diving a little deeper in. So tonight, this is kind of the conversation. So we want to talk about the art of leveling up. And the art of leveling up will really come down to a couple different key factors, which we'll navigate through to tonight. And they're not going to be because you have a super incredible new biohack. Those are all very beneficial and very helpful. Yet they're really going to reside with your ability to have your mind working in a way that serves you moving forward. And those are two key things: that it serves you and it's getting you to move forward. So part of this conversation comes from, this isn't something I read in a text. This isn't something I studied or downloaded gobs of science or anything like that. This is my observation. 26 years, I guess now. and lots of study on subconscious programming, on how the mind works. And I realized to be a really effective chiropractor with a skill set, to really effectively use that skill set, I would have to become a master communicator. So I've spent most of my career emphasizing that about my skill set, meaning doing everything I can to become a master communicator, meaning someone that's effectively able to communicate to someone else to help them get what they want. And if I can do that, then my skills are easily applied and become more effective. But if I can't communicate well, then it gets a little tricky for all of us in the healthcare profession. And I think everyone's ran into someone as a healthcare provider and be like, oh, I just couldn't stand their bedside manners. So all of that plays into what I'm going to speak to tonight. But more importantly, if you're listening to this tonight, or you're listening to this down the road, have fun with this conversation, and just imagine for a moment you're able to kind of apply these things. And I'm going to repeat several of them throughout the night here. So the first thing that we're going to do to level up, in order to kind of this art of leveling up, we're going to let go of all excuses. All excuses. So first, before we go into any detail, I want you to imagine right now that you lived in a world that you never had an excuse again. If you let that sink in for just a moment here and think, well, what does we mean by that? I mean this. I mean that you never blamed being late on traffic. You never blamed being late because of the weather. You never had an excuse. You didn't, your health, your wealth, your relationships have no excuses. And I think one of the fun ways we can kind of go about this is that we look at everything through the lens of no excuse also means that I have to take some responsibility. And we're going to dive deeper into that one in just a moment here. So one of the things that over the years I've become really, really good at, and I guess it's just by default, is I've become really, really good at sniffing out bullshit, sniffing out excuses. And hopefully, anytime you have a doctor's visit, that they have become really good at it as well. The second part of this, where it becomes really, really important, is that you look around your life and you start to do a little bit of inventory and ask yourself, the people that are in my tribe, your spouse, your coworkers, your friends, do they buy your excuses? This is a really, really important part. So here's the thing. We're really good at using our excuses and then developing a deep belief in them ourselves. It's one of those things where, like, if you just say it over and over and over again, even if it's a flat out lie, eventually it feels like truth.
It's so interesting because the repetition amplifies it.
It really does. And that's our excuses. So as a healthcare provider, just imagine, listen, this doesn't make me an expert because I'm a healthcare provider. Yeah, I hear it all, right? So I hear why people lose weight or don't lose weight. I hear why people hurt their backs and why it wasn't their fault. I hear all the time why they had a heart attack because it was their dad, it was their cousin, it was their neighbor, their dog, whatever, right? It was in their genes. The same things over and over and over again. And when those things get passed on, that's when we literally have double trouble. So one of the first notes to make tonight is, does your tribe buy your excuses? And I want to expand your tribe. And this is where, for the healthcare providers that are listening, this is where now we are on the hook, because it goes like this. Imagine for a second that your healthcare provider buys your excuses. So no one loves to be called out on their stuff. Yeah, imagine if your healthcare provider literally buys you out and you say, Doc, man, I don't understand. I've been really eating good this year. My diet is pretty good, and I've cut back on my alcohol. I don't understand. My cholesterol is so high, my blood pressure is so high. It must be something else. What if your doctor buys that?
It's a sticky scenario when you have that echo chamber in that healthcare space.
Yeah. And so 100%. So think about it that way. And I'll say that because listen, I'll tell you honestly, I'm sure over the years people have not shown back up in my office as a result of the sniff test. And because they say things so confidently and they want me to buy into it. But at the same time, if I buy into it, and it's not my job, I'm not trying to ever make anyone wrong or right. But if I buy into it, I can't help them. And there's a couple of reasons for this. And this is what I would also say about excuses. Here's the one truth about them is that no matter how real we make them, somebody else has succeeded with your excuse. Which is kind of interesting when I say this. So someone might say, I don't have enough time. So, well, I got the same amount of hours you do, but I'm still working out. I'm still prepping my food and I'm still taking care of my kids. What's the difference? And someone else might say, well, you don't understand. I've had some, hard times in my life. We've all had hard times. Mm. That's the reality. I don't know anyone who hasn't had hard times. And this is just part of life. And so again, imagine a world for a moment where your excuses were unaccepted and you just lived in a world that you didn't have any, you didn't produce any, never mind anyone listening to them. And then when you did think about them, if you did produce them, hopefully your tribe, and who's your tribe? It's your spouse, it's your doctors, it's the people at your church, it's the people at your work, it's everybody that you communicate with. And you're hoping moving forward that they never buy the fact that you were late. The excuse was because there's traffic.
So I wonder that scenario, Bart, like what is a way in which you could gracefully not accept an excuse?
So I think there's a combination of ways that this has to happen. So one, you could look at that very thing and you could say, well, what am I lacking here? And this opens up the can. So this is where we have to do some self deep diving. Well, what am I lacking here? What is it? I'm showing up late all the time. So acknowledgement of that very thing that might be going wrong. That's why we use excuses. We use excuses basically to say, sorry for my behavior, sorry for the outcome that I'm causing. And therefore, we use excuses. And I think there's a couple of things here. One, there's this, I guess there's kind of a saying, there's you reap what you sow. And there's a couple other sayings that I want to share them because I really think these are kind of fitting. And one is that days follow the night and success follows failure. And I'm going to kind of say those again. We'll break them down a little bit. So days follow night. So sometimes things are dark and then the light comes. And that's the cycle of life always. Not sometimes, always. And success follows failure. Yet we have to identify the failure. Maybe more importantly, we have to be willing to fail. And that is one of the challenges when I think about the art of leveling up right now. In order to level up, you have to be willing to reach for something that you don't currently have. And with that comes challenge, it comes fear, it comes worry, and it comes the possibility that you're going to fall flat on your face. Which means that and I think generally there's a softness that might be taking place. And as a result of it, there's not enough people reaching for that next step to level up because it's not a guarantee, because there's going to be risk involved. And then as adults, and I think that's where it starts, we do it as adults. We're like, well, I got to be careful here. Don't go outside without your jacket. You might get sick. Don't jump your bike over that curb. You might get hurt. Like just stuff. We infiltrate the little person's brain and then start to teach them, don't take risk because you might fail and fall down. And I think if, years ago, and I brought up those particular ones because I remember my mom used to handle a little bit different. Say, hey, if you get sick, it's on you. And it was out of love, but it was mainly I had to own it. Like if I went outside without my gloves on during the winter, don't come back and crying about my cold hands. And we've changed that a little bit. To some degree.
We've changed that a lot, Bart.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the other part of it is that we have to watch out if people are not refuting our excuses. And this is an area that we've become very soft with. So if I come up with something and I say, well, it's not my fault. Like, this is the economy's bad, and sorry, I can't get the team paid this month. Right. So I just blamed it on the economy. And now all of a sudden, so now what? If it's not refuted, now I have an excuse that works. Take that in our health. And I made that other one up. That was probably not a great one, but nonetheless, when it comes to our health, if I say, well, I tried all those things and they didn't work. And then if I'm the doctor and I say, well, okay, got it. So that's good. That was a good excuse. They didn't work. And I let you get away with that. And I didn't refute that, or your friend doesn't, or your spouse doesn't. If we don't refute that, unfortunately, then most likely they're going to repeat those actions that got them those same results.
So Bart, can you refute with love?
100%. 100%. And I'm 100% encouraging to do it. I do it every day. I do it absolutely every day. And to do that, and I think that's a wonderful point to make. We don't have to make someone wrong. We might help them see things others ever so subtly a little bit different. And sometimes it's just like, well, what else do you think you could do? And we just give them an action opportunity once again. And because that's really always the medicine that comes down to, give the individual the action opportunity instead of trying to become the solver of all things. And a lot of times, out of our love and our kindness, that's what we're trying to do for people. So we want to allow ourselves to reap the rewards. And along with this comes another kind of tricky, I don't know if it's a conversation or not, yet it's territory that I think is lost. If you're going to truly accept and reap the rewards of your action, you have to be unapologetic about it. Meaning, it is important, I think, moving forward, if you want literally the art of leveling up, you have to be able to reap your rewards and not apologize for your success.
We could call this a part of celebration, yeah?
Yes, 100%. And that's real. So we have a lot of people cleansing right now. And I have people on sidebars tell me, well, I didn't want to share this week because I didn't want to make anyone else feel bad. So to that, I will say this, and to the kind of the excuses, when sometimes we use excuses and we say, well, they hurt my feelings. No, they did not. That's the reality, that they did not hurt your feelings. You chose to act in a certain way as a result of things. So when we think about the celebration, more often than not, it's been toned down so much, which we're literally told, unless you're like, scoring a touchdown in the end zone, we're basically told not to celebrate anymore. And in order to level up, you're going to have to experience full-blown dopamine dumps. And this is a little bit of the technical part. We're not doing it through celebration. So we're doing it through food, drugs, alcohol, other things that give us a false sense of celebration instead of hard ass work over long periods of time and having results that you wanted and celebrating like a mofo.
Right, that's an excellent point, and it resonates so strongly that it's like the shift of the dopamine. We're like finding it elsewhere, but it's actually available, like just being in our life experience, like a fully lived life.
Yes, in that part of it, it's so real. And I don't even know how it came about. And like little kids celebrate and then they get told not to, don't do that. Like, Sally's going to cry well, I don't know. And I don't know how that really takes place, but as adults, it's held so tightly and so closely. And listen, I'm not suggesting that we go around bragging or anything, but I think even me just saying that inhibits people from celebrating. So I think if you have earned and you are reaping a reward of your hard work, go celebrate. The bummer is that if bad times hit, people fully embrace you complaining about it, fully embrace that it doesn't work out for you and your feelings are hurt, your emotions are hurt, you're not in a healthy place. So we embrace the negative part of it, yet we're not embracing the solid part of it. So our challenge here is we're trying to level up, is let go of all of that. Yet when you look at your tribe, really starting to observe, saying, you know what, who in my tribe helps me celebrate? when I've had a victory, what does it take? Who's right there pushing me to celebrate, high fiving me, holy moly, that's amazing, and it being heartfelt. And we need more of those people. And the cool thing is that maybe they're not willing yet because they feel it's unsafe as well. So the cool thing is you can become that person. I can become that person first. And it's just like smiling at someone first. It's contagious. So in the event that you want to have more people to be able to celebrate in your life, which is amazing because there's a little bit of I would say a healthy addiction to moving towards something that you really, really want and working really, really hard for it. And when that happens, again, the journey is enjoyable. So you're enjoying the life you're living because it's on purpose. And I often think purpose gets lost because when you think about this, Whit, for a moment, that imagine you have a purpose and you see how to get there. You have a strategy. You can see the road to success there. Yet at the end of the road, there's no celebration. So maybe we're losing purpose because we have lost the ability of the art to celebrate. So that's one of the, I think, the exciting parts of our conversation tonight is to allow ourselves to flat out celebrate. I'll give a little too much information.
Is it about the Cowboys? Because I heard they did well last night.
Oh, they did? Oh, weird. Yeah. Yes, they did. And yes, I celebrated. And I have
Awesome.
Yes, I definitely have a dance that takes place.
Bart, I never knew that. I hope we one day get the opportunity.
Yeah. If it was, it would be one of those things like if you ever watch people like those crazy football fans that celebrate and they knock their TV over and all that stuff, and you see it on a commercial or on Instagram, it could happen like that.
It would be the start of your TikTok career. This is good.
Probably. So I think this celebration should happen in many different ways. So I know back when I used to work out a lot in the gym, and when I was younger as a young man, bench pressing was a huge thing. And here's the thing, there was no easy way to lift more weight. You just had to grind that shit out week in and week out, month after month, meal after meal, rest after rest, workout after workout. And man, when you hit a new personal best, you let it rip. You celebrated, your workout partner celebrated, everybody won in that moment. I don't know if that, I don't go to a gym anymore like that, but I don't know if that still takes place. But I'm telling you, I still remember the first time I benched over 300 pounds. And I remember the dude in there, it was my rugby, it was my roommate, my rugby buddy. And I still remember the two of us hugging in the middle of the gym that I broke the 300 mark.
All right, that is a beautiful memory that will stay with you forever. I love that.
It is. And it's that dopamine rush that I'm talking about. That is unreplaceable. And so that's kind of the theme of the art of leveling up, is getting back to these subtleties, but also really acknowledging how have we lost this subtlety of this beautiful thing in life of celebration. And all right, so I might have even sidetracked it. I didn't know I was going to go all the way to my bench press wows. Anyways, having people in your life will amplify that possibility of celebration. And I think we should be able to celebrate across the board with our health, with our wealth, and our finances, and even our relationships, for that matter. I think all of them are super, super important, and none of them are easy. None of them.
Yeah, I love that. Alongside this topic of leveling up, it's not that it's easy, but dang, is it worth it?
Mm-hmm. Amen. That's it. That journey, and that's really what leveling up is. It's a journey. It's not an event. And it also can give us a little perspective on the things that we're doing in life. Maybe sometimes the reason they're not that fulfilling is because we're treating them as if they're events. We're not treating them as this is part of my journey. And I'm going to be a better human being. And this year, I'm not going to drink 300 nights a week. I'm going to drink no less than 100. I don't know. And you decide that this is a life journey because that's who you really want to be. And maybe if you also allowed yourself to celebrate, however that may look for you. And I don't think there's anything more rewarding to going on that journey with somebody. And I there's an analogy I like to use in that. Imagine you're at a baseball game. It's playoffs. and there's literally 70,000 people in the fans, and your dude is up, your team is up, it's bottom of the ninth, they're down by 3, the bases loaded, dude cranks a home run, and you're the only one in the stands. Yay, go team, right? Versus 70,000 people lit up, dopamine, neurotransmitters, neural hormones, everything flying in the air. The energy is absolutely, it's magnetic. And the same thing when we go to a concert and we feel the love in the air. That celebration, allowing ourselves to do those types of things and bring it into everyday life, pretty cool.
That's so beautiful. It reminds me of the story that you tell sometimes about the guy kind of walking down the road. Maybe we'll get to hear that tonight.
Oh, that gentleman. Yeah. So I want to share a little bit of a different one than that.
Cool.
There is
Okay.
One of the challenges in all of this is being complacent. That's no doubt about it. And I think complacency is almost a disease, because complacency allows us to accept that by which we do not want. And therefore we lower our bar. Instead of leveling up, we level down. So my wife and I often, we have some of these conversations. So I want everyone right now just to think about, and you probably all know who I'm talking about because there's many people this way. There's a guy that is walking through your neighborhood. He's probably between 50 and 70 years old, and he walked every day. And he's out there, and he's, man, and you think to yourself, this dude's disciplined. And he's a guy, and he's between 50 and 70 years old. And you're thinking, wow, this guy is super disciplined, but you've never asked, I wonder why. And I know why, because I've seen that guy and I've met that guy 500 times through the course of my career. That guy was super complacent. He gained weight. He had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and he was told, and he knew he should lose it. He just didn't. He was complacent. He was okay with not really putting all the work in, and he was leveling down instead of leveling up. And then instead of euphoria and celebration and dopamine rush, he had experienced the opposite. He had experienced massive levels of pain. And most likely that guy that that walks through your neighborhood every single day, twice a day at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., every neighborhood has it. That guy right there has had a heart attack. He's had a triple bypass or a quadruple bypass, and now he's walking for his life. And he didn't have to do that. He could have been walking for his health instead of for not being sick. And now, most likely, he is walking for his health. And the reason he walks every single night, rain or shine, is because he finally realized, oh my goodness, I love every moment that I have to live on this earth. So if you have that guy, look at them and know what happened is this. They got complacent. We are all complacent. And I think one of the reasons that complacency happens, if I was to try to, in a simple way, kind of define it for anyone, is that we lose the value of a day. Literally, we've definitely lost the value of a dollar, right? And I think worse than that, we lose the value of a day of life. And how much is that worth to us? So we toss them away. And it's not intentional, but it's just out of complacency. It's without that purpose, without knowing that you could have in this euphoric, natural celebration that has this incredible dopamine rush that fills your body, fills your cells, fills your veins, balances out your hormones, makes you feel like a Superman or Superwoman when you're on purpose and moving toward that, you're on your journey, moving towards something that lightens you. You get complacent and you don't have that thing you're moving toward, and you just accept what's taking place in life, and you have a whole bucket of excuses. And during that time, you start to lose days. They just start clicking off the calendar. 30 days go by, 300 days go by, and you haven't changed at all. You're the same human you were 300 days ago. Nothing has changed. Maybe you tried a small event for 5 days, 10 days, 15, 20 days, something like that, but nothing has really changed. Next thing you know, that 300 days has turned into 3 years, 10 years. And that complacency no value in the individual day is what eventually takes the days away from us. And then one day, and instead of moving toward that celebration and that dopamine rush, we have a scare. And hopefully, fingers crossed, you get out of that scare relatively unscathed. You get out of that thing unscathed, and hopefully you then take what I consider is the most important part of all this conversation tonight, is then you take full responsibility. So it's interesting in that the conversation of full responsibility. And again, I know that it almost comes across a little heavy, and I don't want it to be, yet at the same time, I absolutely want it to be.
I think it might be profound over heavy, Bart.
Mhm. And I don't say any of that light, because
Yeah.
every one of us knows there's a dude walking in their neighborhood. And if you have a moment to ask them why they walk, they're going to tell you why. I already know why. And it's because they lost the value of a day. They won't have that sentence for it, but it's because they had to experience it the other end, the other side of it. So the beauty is that it does, all it takes is literally a change of mind, a conversation with your spouse. Your biggest excuses. You can listen, and we're going to get to them. Hopefully we'll have a moment and you can just ask me, what are the worst excuses I hear all the time? And I'll share them with you. And you're going to get everyone will be like, oh shit, I use that one all the time. Anyways, so hopefully somewhere along the way that rings a little bit bell of, do you value your days? And are your days part of the journey that you want to be on? So eventually you get to celebrate. And maybe you're killing it, meaning that you figure out that the journey is just having another day. And you figure out a way to celebrate every day. That would be some serious magic right there. Some serious magic. All right. So we talked about
no excuses.
no excuses. The next one I want to talk about is, and we won't spend quite, I don't know, maybe we will, is no complaining. None. So now I want you to imagine you live in a world where you personally have no excuses and you can never complain. So there's like an art of complaining. People are really, really good at it. And again, how do I know this? Just because I've had the fortunate opportunity to just be around people, and lots of them on a regular basis for the last 20 plus odd years. And when people come to their healthcare providers, I don't want you to mix that up. It's not complaining when you go to your doctor. You're sharing with them your experience about your body and your health. And it's our responsibility to interpret what you're doing and help you create strategy, vision, and passion about moving forward. So anyways, you're allowed to talk to your doctor. You don't have to say, well, no, everything's good, doc. And this is by no means what I'm saying tonight is fake it till you make it. It's none of that. This is really deep down observation, gut check time. Do you have excuses that are holding you back from being the best version of yourself? Are you using complaining as part of your tool set? People are good at complaining. And here's the thing about complaining. First of all, if you like to be liked by other people, I will tell you right away, nobody likes you when you're complaining. Nobody. It's just not a fun energy. And that complaining, even though we use it so frequently, seems so subtle. When someone complains about the weather, nobody feels better. Like, this isn't a good, like, oh, thank you for sharing that. No, it doesn't feel good. That's all, you just filled space here. And now it's a little awkward because we're talking about bad weather and God's doing that. I have nothing to do about that one. So complaining, there's almost an art. So imagine that you weren't allowed to complain at all. You couldn't complain. Oh, I'm going to go a little technical here when it comes to health. Couldn't complain about hot flashes. I'm going to say you can't complain about pain. You can talk about it, but can't complain about it. Because we have to accept that those are all things that somehow we participated in on some level. And we got where we were together with our bodies. So I'm not saying your hot flashes don't exist, but imagine that you lived in a world where you were thinking that a doc and said, oh my God, I can't believe these hot flashes. They're awful. I've done everything. There's nothing else I can do. I've tried everything. Versus saying, my body's definitely talking to me. Last night I had a hot flash again. I felt like I was going to cook. Hope I don't have one of those again. You got any suggestions? Different vibration, different actions are going to be taken after that. And then most likely set up for celebration. Here's the thing about complaining in general. If we complain, it's typically the art of sending that blame outward. So we're essentially moving the target of responsibility. Instead of inward, we send it outward. So we blame maybe the weather, we blame maybe your grandmother's hormones, you blame something else other than the owner of those issues. And the challenge there is if it's not you, then you can't do anything about it. We're going to require some level of an outside thing to fix us. And observing behavior here in our country in the last couple of years about how we handled a pandemic, it was clear that we were looking to blame and not take firsthand personal responsibility. We were looking for someone else to tell us what to do, how to do, when to do. And yes, it was really scary, but there's a lot of things that are really scary. And it's not the last time that we're going to be kind of exposed to the mental anguish of hard decisions. So if you are a complainer, imagine that you now live in a world where you have no excuses, you have no complaints, and you're going to make sure that your tribe is fully capable, aware, and allowed to address your complaining and your excuses. So they don't listen to them anymore, and you don't get mad at them. And you almost invite them to say, and you say, hey, Whit, the next time you hear me complaining about the weather or the fact that my dogs kept me up all night, just give me a little gut check. And just ask me what I love so much about my dogs, or, ask me, how much the farm needed some rain or whatever. Right. So, and those are loving ways to do it versus saying, hey, don't talk about your dogs that way. Right. We can do these in loving ways without necessarily, being adversarial to each other. So, and again, telling your doctor your issues, no, that's perfectly fine. So don't, like, if you come into me, you can't be like, well, doc, everything's good, I can't complain to you. That's not the idea. And again, when we use complaints, if we navigate that a little bit more, we look deeper into the actual complaint we use, more often than not, that right there is where our weakness lies. So for example, if you say, I don't have time to exercise, I don't have time to meal prep, most likely you got poor time management skills. So to your question earlier, where do you need to go to work? Go figure out how to get better time management skills, right? So that's really it. So that's when we go, do I need more education? Do I need more finances? Do I need more health? Where is my weakness lie? If you say I have no energy, then say, well, where do I get more energy? Well, that comes from within. So I got to become a healthier human being. So they're recognizing what you use or what we do use. And listen, I'm just as guilty as anyone. I have my things. If we have these excuses and these little complaints that we're often using, usually right within those complaints lie our biggest challenges, really our biggest weaknesses. And if we overcome those, sky's the limit.
So in this magical world, Bart, where there are no excuses and no complaints, I wonder what there is.
So what there is there's strategies. Well, it's a couple things. We are owning that responsibility. So this is really the third part of this, is taking full responsibility. And I think I mentioned that just a moment. Taking full responsibility for everything. I'm going to go a step farther because that's the perfect question, is when we take responsibility, and then it allows us to decide the next action step. But here's the cool thing about responsibility. Technically, and I guess technically, yet the rite of passage from child to adult, it's not age, it's taking responsibility, which is kind of comical, right? So when we think about it, and you might, we have to step back and we think, there's a lot of adults, there's a lot of children dressed up as adults, because really as adults, we should be taking full responsibility for every aspect of our life, for everything with your health, as hard as it may kind of come across, or how hard it may sound. And the beauty is, when you do take responsibility for it, you're in control. You get to be the one that takes action, and it might be really, really hard. You may have to come over some You may have to overcome some really tough disease processes in your body, the life-threatening ones. But when you do, you become a different human being. And that journey is what may be the actual thing that saves your life. So your health, your wealth, your relationships, if you're broke, take responsibility for it. If you're repeating your relationships over and over and over again, take responsibility for it. So that passageway right there, from when you take responsibility, that's really, you're no longer a child, you take responsibility, and now you are an adult. And along that journey, allowing yourself to reap what you sow. Now, that saying is a real old saying, and oftentimes really what it means is that you are the beholder of you are going to accept your consequences of your prior actions. So your future consequences are going to be a result of your prior actions. And that can go both ways. So maturity is the ability to fail and accept responsibility. So if we have simple guidelines here, we think of it a mature person, that is someone who is willing to take full responsibility for their failures and shortcomings. I'll tell you what, sometimes we go all in. We got this map, we got a map planned out. We got health strategies in place. We got these things. We're going to go on date nights. We can do all these wonderful things, and it don't work. And in that moment, instead of blaming and saying, I did that, I tried that, I read that book, it didn't work, I did that exercise, I didn't lose the weight, I ate those foods, it didn't taste good, or whatever it may be. If we go back to, okay, I have to come up with a new strategy, I'm going to take some more actions. And again, we've talked about it here more often than not. The beauty is for all three of these, for not having excuses, for not having complaints, and taking full responsibility, the answer to all of them is take action.
And that's the real power step, that like first step into action.
It really is. And again, and that leads, when we start to take action, it allows us to feel things fully. And this is another really important part. And I know we're going to get closer on time here. So to feel things fully is an important part of this journey. So we have to feel the discomfort with failure. We have to feel, now I want to explain failure in a couple different ways. So failure could be the inability to take action. Let's apply this to our health. If the inability to eat properly ends up with you having imbalanced hormones, neurotransmitters out of whack, and you develop anxiety, that is your responsibility. And man, I just probably got some people mad. So if you're, and I'm going to say that again, just like very similar to what I just said. If your inaction leads to, let's say your inaction to eat good foods, leads to an imbalance in nutrition in your body, and you develop an imbalance of neurotransmitters. And as a result of it, you don't have good serotonin and dopamine, you got leaky gut, you're eating gluten all the time, and then it leads to anxiety. That is your responsibility. And that's a tough one to swallow. Yet, when you say, got it, the beauty is that you then can flip this sucker over in a heartbeat and be on a successful journey, because the journey is half of the victory of, all right, what do I need to do? I need to take action here. And I had a health issue, why don't I take some health actions? And then we just let all the cards fall in place. So that's really how almost simple it can happen, and how quickly we can kind of flip this whole tide over, which is nice. So, and then we got to go a little deeper even. We have to start to pay attention to even all the words that we use. This morning, when I had the individual talk to me about the 4 pounds, and then now they only have 3 pounds, repetitively, she used the word frustrated. So all words have energy as well. So starting to be mindful of, there's a couple words I'm just going to throw out. If you use the word frustrated or annoying frequently, know that they're words of contraction. So they're on a cellular level, think of your cells, they contract. And when you contract, you can't expand. Life's about expansion, love's about expansion, and death and fear are about contraction. So on a cellular level, the words that we use, and especially when we emote behind them, and we put the energy of, I'm so frustrated, and the frown, the frowny face comes on, and the energy comes on, and we tuck forward and we say, I'm so annoyed. And then you fill in the blank. So maybe we have to be a little bit more mindful of our words as well, because they all play such a significant role.
Every single thing we say, kind of internally and externally, Bart.
It really is. And, and so, and again, just so we can level up, right? Like tonight, you can just do an observation. What do I listen to? What do I read? It could be that simple. And ask yourself, do those move me in the direction of who and what I want to be? Will they get me a better health? Will they get my health better, my wealth better, my relationships better? Will it get me more connected to God? Will these things that I'm listening to today, a podcast like this, whatever it may be, are these going to move me in a direction that I want to be moved into? And in the end, this is perfect responsibility time. And the answer is yes, you can completely control this. We're darn good. If you're acting as if and being complacent, be like, no, I don't care about any of that stuff. Someone else is deciding how you should think. Someone else is giving you information. There's news, there's propaganda, there's media. All of that is filling your brain. So we have to be very intentional. We have to be very deliberate about the books we read, the podcasts we listen to. And that's the part I found so exciting. Today so if you guys get a chance, you want to do something that's really fun, type into your Spotify, like on my thing, type in how to expand love on Spotify, and it just scrolls. So like if you're looking for an opportunity to just like look how to like expand your heart and whatnot, there's literally thousands of people out there podcasting about love, which is amazing because that's a pretty darn good energy to put out into the universe. Or you just type the word love and you'll just see like literally it just lights up. So what you're looking for, you will often find. And that's my point there. And that's literally, in this scenario, it's not only simple, it's also easy to be on your journey and on your path. And the beauty too is once you start to do that, it feeds the next decision and it feeds the conversation of the next. There are certain friends that I have over the years that I know have done a lot of the same trainings that I have and same mindset. We get together and there is no complaining and there's no conversation about this. They're like-minded people. It's very like, I don't get away with complaining with my wife. You kidding me? It doesn't work in my house. Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. That, right? So if you're the people around you, it's so important, and it's out of love always. And sometimes it stings a little bit, but good. And that's when good, I got some good people around me. Because if it stings a little bit, then so be it. And I'm going to flip my ways and kind of move on here. All right. So again, if you want something different, ultimately, we're going to have to become different human beings. And how do you become a different human being? It's all through your actions. And sometimes it might be today, and because I think this is relative. If you're on your computer, you're Googling for information, Google words, Google topics that serve you. I'm going to give you a simple example when it comes to health. Some people have symptoms, but I'll do it with a supplement. So let's just say I recommend someone a supplement, and let's say it's Kava. Kava, I've talked about it in the show all the time. It's one of my absolute best when it comes to chilling out. Kicks in about 15 minutes in that period of time. It's one of my favorite things if someone has any anxiety, they're a little bit wound up. It is an incredibly effective therapeutic herb. I've been using it for years now. It's just literally awesome. If you Google Kava, this is a perfect example, and you Google side effects of Kava, you go, oh my God, I better not take Kava. My liver, I'm gonna die. That's what you're looking for, you will find that. On the flip side, if you look at the benefits of Kava, you will be blown away and only mad at me for not recommending it earlier. So incredibly important that what we look for, we are often going to find. So kind of keep that in mind in your journal. I want to walk around. Any thoughts here, Whit? I know we're getting tight on time.
Well, I think this magical world of no excuses, no complaining, and taking full responsibility is closer than we think because we can make these shifts even today.
We really can. And with that, what I would say this, and to our last question that we usually end off here, like what can people do right here, right now to become the best version of themselves, become superhuman? And I would say, ask yourself, what's next? What are you going to do next to move you in that direction? And I promise you, like do an inventory of who and what you were last year. And if you want that and you're complacent with that, just keep doing those things. But what will it require next? What are you going to listen to? What are you going to read? Who do you have to become? What questions? What part of your tribe has to improve? And you do that. And all of a sudden, you get closer and closer to waking up every day and having a lot more value in each day that we have. And the dopamine, the celebration opportunities are wide open.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining us for the Health Made Simple show tonight.
Yes. And of course, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for keep tuning in. And of course, keep doing the thing, keep sharing out, keep spreading the love. And of course, continue to take deliberate action for your mind, your body, overall wellness. That'll be awesome.